Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, one and all, to another edition of Heavy Hands. I'm your host, as always, Connor Rebush, and with me, as usually, you've been downgraded, Phil, is Phil McKenzie. Sorry, pal.
Missed one episode, and forevermore I get downgraded to usual.
Mostly intrepid, mostly reliable co-host, Phil McKenzie. Phil, I'm very glad to have you here with me, I have to say, for the discussion of a fight that I think both of us, if quietly at times, have probably spent the time since the first one looking forward to. A rematch, rather, that I think we've been quietly looking forward to and anticipating this entire time. That is, of course, the main event of the upcoming UFC 271, Israel Adesanya versus Robert Whittaker 2. And I think we're basically going to end up talking about possibly just the top three fights, but we're going to cover the entire main card and at least one of the prelims, in addition to a little Strickland Hermanson chat for a bonus episode. So I'll go ahead and plug the Heavy Hands Patreon right here at the top of the show, because that is the plan. But Adesanya, Whittaker, Lewis, Tuivasa, Cannonier, Brunson, those three at the very least are going to feature in this week's episode. Everything not Adesanya, Whittaker taking the back seat, because we're about to spend at least half an hour talking about this fight. Are you excited, Phil? I'm excited.
I am. This is one of those rematches that feels completely earned. You know, there's no one else in the division it could possibly be at this point. Bobby Knuckles has had a run through a variety of style matchups. I think this is one of those ones EJ Benavidez 2, or any potential a potential rematch between Moreno and Figueiredo, or Holloway Volkanovski 3, where you're just these guys are without a doubt the best in this division at the moment.
Yep.
And there's a lot to be really interested in.
Yeah, I mean, the first fight, there was so much anticipation leading up to that. The second fight is, if anything, more interesting now, knowing, especially because, weirdly enough, Whittaker being at least the second best in the division, or I don't know how you feel about some people just being unfortunate enough to have bad style matchups, you know? But Kyle McLaughlin would approve of this. There's two bantamweight boxers, Eder Joffrey and Fighting Harada, and Joffrey is almost certainly has a better resume than Harada, and is one of the very best of his division of all time. But Fighting Harada had his number, and I think beat him every time they fought. So does that mean that Harada is a better fighter than Joffrey? I think when time passes, that becomes a more difficult question to answer. But at the very least, Whittaker's the second best person in the division, and yet easily the most violent victim of Adesanya's in the entirety of his title reign. Adesanya dusted Whittaker. He knocked him down savagely twice and hurt him more than that. He hasn't really done that to anybody else. Granted, he fought one of the most durable blockheads on earth in Marvin Vettori.
I mean, he did it to Paulo Costa.
That's true. That's true. But that was entirely one-sided. Paulo Costa asked for that. He did. He didn't. He shit the bed.
Yeah, he did.
Robert Whittaker maybe made some bad decisions, but he didn't shit the bed. He was in there fighting competitively with Adesanya, whatever you may say about his approach or the style matchup not favoring him. And yet, despite Whittaker's undeniable greatness, Adesanya finished him hard. So, not the way that he finished Costa hard. I'm sorry.
Jesus, Connor.
Because he humped him on the ground, remember?
Yes.
So, it's only gotten more interesting. It's the kind of thing, basically, that we've not had to see Robert Whittaker adjust to, which is doubly fascinating because between the two of them, I would kind of say Whittaker is arguably the better adjuster interestingly enough. I think at the very least, when things aren't going according to plan, I have seen Whittaker change tack more often against adversity than I have seen Adesanya do the same. So,
so out of the two of them, Adesanya hasn't had many MMA rematches at the very least.
No.
It's basically Vittori, where so you could say, on a very blunt level, I think Adesanya did better against Vittori the second time than he did the first time. For example, Whittaker did. What's that?
Did he?
Yeah, he kind of lost one of the rounds, or at least came close to it in the first time.
He came close to losing one of the rounds, but it was just because, I don't know, he got taken down. He improved that, no doubt.
Yeah.
He got up more effectively. He beat the shit out of Vittori a lot harder in the first fight, though. He only did many more.
If you'd watched the first fight, you might think that Vittori had some chance to win late.
Sure.
After the second fight, you're just like, no, this is a complete shutout.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Whittaker against Romero, he undeniably does worse the second time round.
Yes.
Well, admittedly, because Romero has one of the most insane game plans of all time.
Yeah. In some ways, he does much better. He's like, the moments when Whittaker's in control in that fight, it's way clearer than it was in the first fight. You're like, oh, he is whooping Romero's ass. He just has much lower lows as well, where he didn't really have any deep low points in the first fight. Yeah, by the way, I just was thinking of this because we talked about it on the Handy so recently, but I really enjoyed rewatching Adesanya, Vittori 2. And from the very beginning, after the first round, which is so clearly Adesanya's round, and in the corner, Rafael Cordero is like, you lost that round. And Vittori doesn't hear a single thing he says after that. Cordero talks for another 20 seconds. And after he says all these things, Vittori looks at him and says, lost that round? And he's just been mad about it the whole time. He just refuses to believe him. Very good. But yeah, I guess that's an interesting question. Has Whittaker had many MMA rematches? Is it just Romero?
There's anyone I can think of off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't necessarily know how I think about Whittaker as a rematch adjuster. More as a when things go bad within a fight, who have I seen sort of collect themselves and come up with different approaches? Adesanya at least does have a sort of pathological thing where sometimes he gets shut out of a fight and just kind of accepts it. Like Romero, like Blachowicz.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess, it's a rematch. One guy lost. Not one-sidedly necessarily, but certainly dramatically and definitively. So the big question is, do we sort of review what happened in the first fight, or we just do that in the course of answering the question, what does Whittaker do differently in the rematch?
Yeah, I think in both cases it's a question of like, what do both guys potentially do differently? Because you can never assume that it's even if you talk about fighters within like not necessarily like using different parts of the game to fight. Adesanya is basically going to be mostly like a jabs and low kicks guy. And with a few counters, for example, he's not going to he's not going to change his fundamental approach. He's not going to start shooting takedowns or but it is worth thinking about the fact that like I think there are things like Whittaker does actually quite well in the first round against Adesanya.
Mm-hmm. I think he almost certainly wins that round, if not for the knockdown in the literal last second.
Oh yeah, definitely, 100%. But also that Adesanya is, I think, very deliberately not doing very much in that round. He is trying to get his reads.
Yeah.
So, if Adesanya comes out and more aggressively pushes, more aggressively starts exchanging in the pocket with Whittaker, that immediately go as badly for Whittaker as it did the first time.
Right. I don't even think he has to push. He just pulled the triggers earlier, right? But that is assuming that Whittaker will have the same approach in the pocket. The thing is Adesanya's success is so much about, I think, this is not taking anything away from Israel, but it is very much about Whittaker flinging himself into counters. And so is there anything else Adesanya can do to make that happen if, thinking optimistically for Bobby Knuckles here, he does not fight that way?
So this is the question that we've sort of found ourselves grappling with after Whittaker's fights, right? Mm-hmm. So like when he fought Darren Till, the question is, when he's up against someone who simply moves out of the way when he comes after them and tries to draw them onto shots, is he always just going to chase them?
Yeah, it's a big question.
Honestly, I think the answer is just yes at the moment.
Yeah, if anything, you could say not a great performance against Till, but he chose his spots to chase more carefully, which could do the trick. It's not like he had zero success chasing Adesanya in that fight, even in round 2. He had some moments. It's just that you do it often enough, Adesanya's going to find some really weird counters that hurt you badly because you're flinging yourself into them.
I mean, in that way, we're talking about like Benavidez, Benavidez versus Demetrius Johnson. It does resemble that matchup in at least this manner, because Benavidez threw tons and tons of like dangerous level changing blitzes where he just threw himself into the fire over and over again. And then at one point, Demetrius in their fights that they had, Demetrius Johnson caught him clean and slept him. So the question is, just how likely does that have to be how likely is that, and how much is Whittaker just stuck having to do that? I think to some extent he is stuck having to do that. But we've had some conversations on Twitter. You did mention that doesn't I think the main thing is that in that first round he starts finding success with jumping in with the jab, and then kind of closing behind, like shifting into the right hand behind it. And as soon as Adesanya starts angling off, you can see it becoming more and more dangerous.
And then there's a really interesting thing in that fight where like both guys are trying to have the punctuation mark at the end of the exchange. And you can see in round 2, Whittaker he's gotten a bead on. So the shot Adesanya hits him with, like, he knocks him down with it first, and then he hits it at least 2 or 3 more times really clean. And he hurts Whittaker with it once, and another time grazes him with it. But it's like a backwards check hook off the right hand, where he moves off to his left, but instead of doing that by pivoting behind a left hook, he shifts backwards, like sort of sidesteps back out of his stance and brings a right hook after him. So it's sort of like a check hook that comes up the middle. And he hits that shot really effectively. And in the knockout exchange, you can see that Whittaker has adapted to that and is like, he blocks that right hand or narrowly gets out of the way, and then he gets slept when he's going for the punch that's supposed to counter it. Because Adesanya has also anticipated that he would get out of the way of that right hand, or it's started to miss more, so he is also thinking of tacking on further punches and finishes him with a left hook off of that right shift. And I do think, that is a pathological Bobby Knuckles thing. His entire career, he has, against certain fighters, like against Romero, who doesn't like get out of the way. If you're just there, he'll just touch you with his jab, or like Kelvin Gastelum, and look like
a static opponent.
Yeah,
he's tremendously diverse and attritive.
Yeah, but if you get out of the way, especially if you do that while bothering him with low kicks that he's never really figured out how to block, then he's gonna chase you. So I think there's 2 ways you can go with that. If you're Robert Whittaker, you can try to fight against type, which there may be some wisdom to that. You can try to fight Adesanya more at range. You can try to deal with his kicks. People can beat him that way. I don't know if Whittaker can necessarily, but Jan Blachowicz did. Yoel Romero didn't let him look great. If you can deal with his kicks at long range, then Robert Whittaker can still hit him with the jab and with the low kicks he was landing and all these things that were working just fine in single moments in the first fight. The other way around it, I think, and this still assumes that, as against Till, he will mitigate his tendency to burst in. That you can't just do it all the time the way he did against Adesanya the first time around. You have to choose your spots. I think this may be more fruitful, is to just... This is more like trying to mold Whittaker's psychology rather than trying to make him do something he doesn't normally do. Is to just change the pathways that you want to extend down. If you want to chase after somebody pathologically when they create space, how do you do that in a way that isn't just getting into longer and longer punching exchanges? And I think there are two big candidates, one of which worked effectively in the first fight, and one of which worked effectively for Jan Blachowicz. The first is low kicks. If you're facing a guy who eats your jab and then leans back expecting you to fall into the pocket trying to punch him in the face, kick his leg. Classic tactic. Guy leans back, his leg's still there. You can kick it and you can land hard. There's not.
I think he did do this a bunch against Till.
And against Till. Yes.
Yes. But I think it was the fact that the open stance matchup meant that he just didn't have a low kick available in quite the same way.
It was a lot of outside
low kicks. Would have to
shift
into it, or he still did it a whole bunch.
Yeah, it was one of his adjustments, I think, to this uncomfortable style matchup. And I think it'll be a little easier against an Adesanya who is at least sometimes, most of the time even, standing orthodox. You lead in with your jab. You extend the exchange by nailing his leg or kicking his body, not by continuing to swing for his head. Alternatively, you could also throw, some more body punches. But still, I think exchanges in punching distance are going to be tricky. We've seen how dangerous Adesanya is with those. The other attack is to extend the exchange by doing a takedown. Guy leans back. Robert Whittaker has shown an increasing proclivity for wrestling. Might be the kind of thing where, again, it's sort of against type in the way that it might gas him out if he has to do it a lot. But just as a thing to try, it can't hurt. If there's anything in Adesanya that gets him to sort of key down a bit and become more thoughtful and more defensively minded, then succeeding with a greater variety of threats can't be a bad idea. So I think that's probably the successful avenue for Whittaker here is rather than trying to do something totally different, like fighting at range off the back foot, trying to deal with the kicks or something, have a broadly similar approach where you just change the way in which you're trying to build off of the successes. Because as we both agree, he had plenty of successes in the initial moments of those exchanges. Even the ones where he got hurt were frequently preceded by him landing a clean jab. That jab is going to be just as successful in this fight. I think Whittaker just has, this is part of the reason I think he's susceptible to the low kicks. He's just got better boxing positioning to work his jab than Adesanya does. He did a really good job in that first fight of when at long range finding his way to a little angle, and once he sensed he had it, boom, straight in with the jab. You can pierce the center line. And also as a counter, when Adesanya would come in, he would come in more square. And Whittaker could just be like, oh, you're squaring up. Boxers know what to do with this. Boom, you run into a jab. That's still a great entry point and a fantastic counter for Robert Whittaker. So I think it still comes off the jab, but just don't do longer and longer punch combos.
Yeah. I think in general, he just has the main thing that he has to do, which I think is it's just going to be difficult for him, I think, is because it's not exactly who he is. I've heard Adesanya saying this, is that thinks, Whittaker might have some ideas in the rematch, but he reckons he's going to return to form. He's going to drop back into old habits. That's probably true.
That tends to be what happens under duress.
Tends to be what people do. I think Whittaker just needs to take what's there.
Exactly.
Don't
chase targets. Just there's always a target, especially if you get the guy reacting to your first threat. There is a target. Take it.
Yeah. Because much of the sort of competitive nature and the moments where he got into trouble, both against Adesanya and Till, are just him, hugely overextending.
Mm-hmm.
In both of those examples, I mean, specifically against Till, like, how much of a round winner is Darren Till? Like,
no.
You just threw jabs the whole time.
Yeah.
Trust him to like win a decision if Whittaker just stuck to a diet of low kicks and jabs?
No.
No, I'm not really.
Whereas Adesanya's a little better than that.
Yeah, but Adesanya can, at least in the case of the Romero fight, be brought in to potentially lose sort of point scoring decisions.
Mm-hmm.
It's the fact that Whittaker has to try and take his head off all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as you mentioned, he should go for takedowns. He should low kick. He should just jab into jab more. I think this is something that he did more back when he was, briefly with TriStar.
Uh-huh.
He double and triple jabbed a lot more. But now he really does come in with like the jab and then something else.
Double jab is a brilliant tactic. It works so well. Marvin Vettori had considerable success with double jabs. Most of them of the more predictable variety, where it's like, okay, it's a 1-1-2. There's a reason that combo works so well. A 1-1-2 is better than a 1-2. Because it's trickier to get the timing of it. The two punches coming off the same hand, that's sort of like what Jack Slack talked about way back in the day with Anderson Silva. That's going to throw off somebody's defensive timing if they're like Adesanya, who, again, the thing I was kind of getting at with the boxing positioning is like, this is going to be a very funny comparison. Adesanya is a little closer to Sean Strickland than Robert Whittaker is, in that he's more comfortable putting himself in a position where if you do the right things, you can hit him. And a position in which he will have to rely on his vision and his reaction time to get out of the way. Whittaker, except for the lead leg being a constant target in his stance, is not like that. When he is at range sitting in his stance, he's pretty safe. His head's pulled back. He's balanced. He doesn't just get into range and stand there waiting for you to do something. He enters from out of your effective range. So yeah, what was the point that I got onto that for? Sorry, I'm rambling.
Adesanya boxing positioning and how he's like Sean Strickland.
He's just like Sean Strickland. Why did I get onto that though?
It's exactly the same, yeah.
What were you saying before that?
Double jabs?
Double jabs. Exactly. So the guy's there. He's relying on his reaction times, like Anderson Silva. He's putting himself in a position where he has to read the combo correctly. So just double jab. You might hit him with both jabs. The first jab landed so often in the first fight. I 100% agree with that. Double jabs, triple jabs. Mix it up. Head and body jabs. Jab, jab, jab.
He should double jab, then just do nothing afterwards.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't have to set something up.
Yeah, I think, and that is, if there is something like Whittaker not extending exchanges, that again, that's a little more, I think, like fighting against type for Whittaker. Though, as we've seen in past fights, not like outside his capabilities. Then that's a fight where it's like, maybe Adesanya looks a little bit more like Darren Till at range. Maybe it's actually not just like a death sentence to be working at range with him if you're occupying him with your relatively safe strikes. Because the other thing that Whittaker actually succeeded with several times was countering Adesanya. Adesanya is also vulnerable when he has to lead. We've seen that. That's why he stopped doing it against guys like Romero and Blachowicz, because he was worried they were going to defend and then counter him. And Whittaker was able to slip Adesanya's jab and land the left hook. He was able to send the right hand over Adesanya's jab. And he was able to, as I said before, counter jab Adesanya when he was trying to close in. Just jab. This goes to every MMA fighter. Just do the jab more. It's a good punch.
The obvious risk is that, the more he leans on his jab, the more he gets low kicked.
Yes.
The more he tries to counter things like low kicks, the more he gets stuck in combinations.
Yes.
So, I think that there's risk at all levels. I think, we talked a lot about what Whittaker has to do. I think there's obviously room for Adesanya to do things as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think the main thing is that, like, Whittaker was in both this and, the Till fight, he's changing his level a lot. Not necessarily in this fight to go for
takedowns,
but
defensively,
he's just coming in like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think Adesanya has shown he can kind of take Whittaker's shots.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason why he shouldn't just step knee him every now and again.
Yeah,
he did Derek Brunson,
and he threw some nifty uppercuts against Vettori as well, where he would sort of feint and get Vettori to shell up, and then sort of like a half leaping short right uppercut. Off of like a shift.
And he landed some nice body shots against Whittaker in their first match as well.
Mm-hmm.
Which, again, makes a lot of sense. And I think in general, Adesanya is going, I suspect, to wait and read Whittaker again, and potentially sort of give away the first round.
Sure.
I don't know whether that's the best idea. I feel like he should be sort of more aggressive from the jump this time.
Mm-hmm.
Just be jabbing with Whittaker as much as possible and trying to set up that kind of dynamic of jab versus low kick versus exchange.
Why do you say you're not sure if it's the best idea?
I mean, it didn't get him into trouble the last time, but he was like soundly losing that round.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like he's probably got a better read of who Whittaker, how Whittaker strikes now.
Mm-hmm. So how does he get more aggressive? That's my question. Because his success in the first fight was not about being aggressive. So how does he force the issue if it's not just, or is it just a matter of if Whittaker comes in doing the same things, you just, like I said earlier, just pulling the triggers right away?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you do that off of some pressure if you're Adesanya to force those big swings out of Whittaker to give him less time to think about what he's doing, which if he makes some kind of dramatic change, he is going to be thinking more, at least early. Do you make him not think so you can have proof of concept for your prediction that he's going to just be the same old Bobby Knuckles?
I think you just try and you just take your opportunities and just fight at the pace that Whittaker is trying to set, almost immediately, because you could see Adesanya upped his pace to match Whittaker's in the second round. I think he can probably just fight Whittaker's pace right from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're probably right. And I do think that, again, if we're talking about Whittaker adjusting in some kind of major way, it's always I don't think Adesanya's wrong when he says that at some point Robert Whittaker is just going to be Robert Whittaker. Force it out of him. That's why styles reign over technical and tactical adjustments. Like, it's baked in. So just make him react to things, make him feel the fight rather than thinking about it, and You know, maybe that's risky too, but it's, you know, aside from jabs, Whittaker didn't have a lot of success landing any other big follow-up shots. And I think Adesanya can eat the jabs if he has to. And again, he frequently ate the jab and then landed a devastating counter when Whittaker came in after it. So why not brave those jabs and try to make something messy happen?
Or just, you know, try and nail him with a level change.
Sure.
And with an intercepting strike just earlier on in the fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the one risk of that, I would say, is that, you know, knees are, as we said this about Rachmanov last week, knees are one of those strikes that are kind of a gamble. Adesanya throws them so well and so quickly. But if Whittaker does come in, I would be very surprised if he hasn't been thinking about some wrestling. Like, that's the most basic, like, dumb guy, just, it's obvious. Mm-hmm. You've seen it work against Adesanya.
The striker.
Yeah, you've seen it work against Adesanya. You have been working on it more yourself, and also just, it's a thing everyone knows about MMA, like you said. You wrestle the kickboxers. So it is, going in with knees aggressively might force that out of Whittaker in an earlier stage, which could be bad for Adesanya. So, I don't really know if Whittaker can, like, effectively hold Adesanya down. So, against everyone except Jan Blachowicz, who was significantly bigger, he has been pretty damn effective at the very least, just, like, kicking off and creating a scramble that gets him back to his feet. And then once it gets to the clinch, he looks really capable, both defensively and dangerous on offense. But still, something to mix in. Do you have a prediction, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one, but I kind of feel like I still have to go with Adesanya.
Uh-huh.
Apart from anything else, like, as a middleweight, B Knuckles has been getting dropped and hurt a bunch.
Yeah.
So, you know, he's had a great run since fighting Adesanya, but he got dropped by Till in the first round. He got his leg hurt against Cannonier, and I mean, he got hurt pretty much.
He got chin checked by Cannonier in the last 30 seconds too.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. He was really badly hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, he destroyed Kelvin Gastelum pretty much, but it's a very
tailor-made,
favorable style matchup for him. So yeah, he's the more vulnerable person. But correspondingly, he's finishing people less. I mean, he's still doing horrible things to them, but he's not. It's been a while since he's knocked anyone out, so he's going to have to win. He's going to have to win a decision. Do I think he can do that? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Do I trust him to?
Yeah.
Not really. I think it's actually a very close matchup. I'm still super interested in this. As you said, you know, there are just tons of moments where Whittaker is winning. He's winning, you know, whilst taking giant gambles the whole time.
Right.
If you know what I mean. And then the gamble doesn't work, and it's so much more punishing when it doesn't work.
Right.
And yeah, and Adesanya as a middleweight has looked. He hasn't been buzzed.
Yep.
He hasn't been hurt at any point. Even in his, I mean, he's been staggered a bit by Yoel Romero, I guess, but you couldn't really say that he was hurt.
No, I think he was more just freaking out.
Yeah, and
the only guy to ever knock him out.
He's been finishing people. Well, I mean, he at least finished Costa and
Bobby Knuckles
and at least. Even if, you know, we both actually sort of think he might have lost that fight, he did do horrible things to Yoel Romero's leg.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It is a constant taxing experience to be at range with Adesanya, unless you're Jan Blachowicz and you just have super underrated kick defense. It was, I think, more and more as time goes on, you just have to acknowledge that was a major aspect of that fight. If you can't defend the kicks, you're at the very least not going to win cleanly.
And from Whittaker, we've seen we've seen evolutions of his game, but we've still seen him be vulnerable to low kicks, and we've still seen him chasing mobile fighters as he has pretty much his whole career.
Yep.
I was like, I kind of have to pick Adesanya.
Yeah. Yeah, way back to like Whittaker's fights with like Uriah Hall and
or Wonderboy.
Wonderboy. Shit, his fight with who was it?
Not Court McGee.
No, not Court McGee.
I was thinking that's not a particularly mobile fighter.
Rafael Natal.
Oh, yes.
Was another guy where like...
That's definitely a low kick one, yeah.
Yeah, clear Whittaker win, but also he's just getting crippled by low kicks the entire time. Yeah, I'm kind of leaning the same way. I think I don't want to... I have to be careful here because I don't want to get called a coward by Schwan Humes again. And I definitely...
That's one way to do that. Get brave.
This is one I have to think, what would Schwan do? You know?
What would Schwan do?
And I think in the past, when I've been called a coward for projecting a path to victory and not predicting it to actually happen, is when I'm just like, oh, this person's really scary. You know? So like clearly the style matchup looks good for the guy I want to pick, but this guy's really scary. This one, the style matchup doesn't really look good for the guy I want to pick. I think it is an inherently uncomfortable kind of fight for Robert Whittaker. And I think Adesanya's right, both when he says that it's not like Whittaker has reinvented his game in these recent wins. I think there were some promising signs against Darren Till, as much as that was clearly a miserably uncomfortable, stressful fight for him, and one in which he didn't look particularly good. Some of the ideas that he like struggled his way to deal with this style matchup were good. And more confidently delivered could pay off here. But it's sort of like it's more hope than anything if I'm going to pick Robert Whittaker. I'm like, I hope he makes the right changes. And that is usually the kind of optimistic pick that does not pay off. Because the other thing Adesanya is right about is that even if Whittaker does make the right changes, at some point, and I love Bobby Knuckles, I hope it comes at the right point. But at some point, he's going to do the stuff Bobby Knuckles always does. And, I got to pick Adesanya. I think it's an uncomfortable fight for Whittaker. I think Adesanya can afford the exchanges in a way that Bobby can't. And I have yet to see Whittaker actually like win a fight with his wrestling. Though I think he's a very good wrestler. I just have yet to see him actually beat somebody with it as a primary weapon. So I don't see it being that big of a factor. I'd love to be wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's not the worst style matchup in the world. I mean, last week, the more I thought about Strickland Hermansson, I was just like, I don't see how Jack Hermansson wins this fight.
Yeah.
I can totally see. I can totally see Whittaker winning this fight because he did for long stretches. But it's just the risk, the attritional damage. He just has to win lots and lots and lots of exchanges without losing one of them super badly.
Yep.
Without Adesanya getting mad enough to just back him into the fence and start unloading on him.
That too. Although again, I think if that happens, the kicks are the real thing to worry about at range. As far as boxing goes, I think if it were a boxing match, Whittaker could win this off the back foot. I really do. Better jabber. Himself quite good defensively to headshots and a really good counterpuncher. So like in those kinds of exchanges, but it's about tailoring. If you're going to base a game plan on that, then like you're going to get kicked because Israel Adesanya will take the targets that are available. He's not just going to chase the head if you keep defending it and countering off those attacks. Between the two of them, that's more a Whittaker thing. So yeah, I'm picking Adesanya too. And I'm very much looking forward to it. I think it'll be. I hope it's a little longer.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like whatever happens, like we always say, these are always the fights where, whoever you're rooting for, you should be rooting for a like long, cool fight.
Yeah, not like the first one was like it wasn't like a first round dusting. It was still very exciting and entertaining. But yeah, I just want to see. Give me 3, 4, 5 rounds. I'm happy for a decision in a matchup like this. I know I'm saying that. I realize that I'm cursing it to somehow be a dreadfully boring fight. But I have high hopes, and I'm much more confident in this delivering than I was in Ngannou Gane. So I'll say that. All right, let's take a break then. As predicted, just about 40 minutes. In segment 1. That sounds about perfect, because next up we have to talk about Derek Lewis versus Tai Tuivasa, and then Jared Cannonier versus Derek Brunson, which I'm actually kind of quite interested in. But heavyweights up next after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
I believe, is he Samoan?
Let's say no.
Is he Maori?
Just because the universe conspires to make you seem racist.
Yeah, is he Maori? No. He's got a indigenous Australian mother and a Samoan father.
There we go.
But he's got
how dare you mix up someone who's
he's got the
half
Samoan tattoos
and half Samoan with someone who's pure Samoan. That's completely different, Connor.
I know. I always brag that I can spot a Warajiri at 100 paces.
Yeah, don't do that. You sound like you're hunting them.
It sounds like I'm looking down a scope or something.
Yes. Another one on my wall. We just jump straight into it.
Yeah, let's do it. Welcome back to Heavy Hands. Heavyweight time. Phil, you wanted to go. Now go.
What? Why?
You urged us.
You just said how much Tai Tuivasa tape you've been watching, and how you had a complete understanding of his game.
Yeah. But, you're like, hey, let's just go. Let's jump in. Enough. So, go on. Tai Tuivasa, Derek Lewis.
I meant you start talking about these guys, because what is there to say? There's going to be... I'm going to guess there's going to be some swanging. And also, feel like there will be like a not inconsiderable amount of banging.
Yeah. What percentage would you put those two possibilities at?
48-52.
Slightly less banging than swanging.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
I feel like the air's going to get punishing in this fight.
Well, I don't know. So here's the thing. Last time, did we both pick against Derek Lewis in favor of the cop?
We didn't pick his fights, do we?
I'm pretty sure. I think we talked about Lewis Dalkhouse.
Oh yeah, no, I picked Lewis. I think.
Okay, very wise.
Maybe you picked Dalkhouse?
I definitely think I did.
Yeah.
And it was all on the supposition that at some point, someone is just going to insist on coming forward and strike with Derek Lewis confidently. And it's going to be closer to 50-50 than basically any other heavyweight has allowed themselves to believe, because Derek Lewis is not particularly good at striking. He just hits really hard. And he's going to back up to the fence. If you want to pressure, you're going to get to. So is this the fight where a guy does that? Because Tai Tuivasa's, I want to say, probably going to pressure, but it seems that every heavyweight on earth faces Derek Lewis, and they're just like, maybe I'll back up and let him flying scissor kick me. Dalkhouse is a pressure fighter. He spent the entire fight with Lewis on the back foot. And got
I think the main thing is, like, you need a way of getting to Derek Lewis. And primarily, I think the thing that people need is they need to jab. And Tuivasa is not really a jabber. He's a reasonably aggressive combination puncher, but he didn't really have a way of initiating exchanges or like starting things going in a way that like JDS or Cyril Gahn could, because they were just like, oh yeah, I'm just going to jab this guy from miles away, and then Derek Lewis immediately looks like a, as bad as he is kind of thing. Is Tai Tuivasa going to jab Derek Lewis? No, he is not.
Yeah.
No. 100% no.
Yeah.
He might do in exchanges, but he's not going to like
it'll be a throwaway
work his
jab.
way in behind a jab.
No.
And then like work the head and body with his left hand. I mean, if he does, it will literally be the funniest thing he's ever done.
If he just comes
all
in...
the shoeys and knocking out Derek Lewis.
Yeah,
comes in behind. He suddenly turns into Roberto Duran for like one fight.
He just comes in, jab, rolls under the counter, 3-punch tight combination. That would be sweet. I like Tuivasa.
Next fight goes back to looking exactly the same.
That'd be even better. Can I just say that people are way too eager to hate on Tuivasa because like it's dumb. He drinks out of a shoe. It's just a simple dumb fun thing, He's fine. He's completely inoffensive as far as we've yet discovered.
I mean, so we've recently seen, like, Jackass 4 has come out, and a bunch of people...
Okay.
People basically talking about how the critical consensus of these films has just increased over time.
Pretty much, yeah.
As everyone's become more and more, like...
jaded?
In agreement of them being, like, this kind of less toxic kind of masculinity and more of a kind of raging against the dying of the light kind of thing, and that it's generally just like kind of fun and cool. And
guys like hitting each other in the balls, and drinking, and just like that's the best version of masculinity right there.
Tai Tuivasa is Jackass MMA.
Yeah, I approve. He's wholesome as far as I can tell. He's wholesome, and he knocked out Greg Hardy. He gets quadruple bonus wholesome points for that.
With his little girl haymakers, I will remind you.
Yeah.
As Greg Hardy memorably said afterwards in one of the biggest Cope interviews I've seen.
Also one of the
time.
least aware things you can say as Greg Hardy.
Right, yeah. Also, him... he said that Tai Tuivasa threw little girl haymakers, and also that Tai Tuivasa was scared of the brawl with him. Yeah. I mean, it's an absolute masterpiece. I recommend anyone to watch it who hasn't already.
Well, Greg was just shocked because normally he knows exactly how to win against little girl haymakers.
Yeah, it's remarkable how many poor choices he makes over the course of like a minute's worth of talking.
It's rare to get a person who is just a straight up villain. But yeah, go on.
A long and loopy way of getting around to this. Tai Tuivasa is going to kick Derek Lewis in the legs, though.
Yes. That is what he did exclusively against Greg Hardy until Greg Hardy hit him.
Yes. And I think that Greg Hardy actually goes more of a way towards addressing low kicks than Derek Lewis does.
Yes.
He actually does try and check them.
Yeah, Derek Lewis's strategy for every kind of attritive strike is to just show exactly how badly it hurt.
Yeah. In fact, possibly show slightly, like, make it look like it hurts worse than it did.
Yeah, just to visibly grimace.
To recoil like he's a little girl in one of in that Alistair Overeem like thing where she gets kicked where she gets low kicked holding pads for him.
Yeah. He's this close to saying, fuck all that, each time somebody actually hits him with a low kick or body shot. Oh.
Yeah. So that is why I'm going to pick Tai Tuivasa.
I agree.
I think he's going to throw low kicks, and think when Derek Lewis panics enough to hit him, I think Tai Tuivasa won't panic back.
Which may still not win. It's 50-50 to me when they start exchanging. Especially if it's an open space, but even not there, like Tuivasa can put combinations together reasonably well. He will hit the body too, which is nice, but he's got no defense. So he's going to get hit by Derek Lewis, and neither of these guys is like impervious to damage. So yeah, I don't know.
I mean, there's still lots of people that Derek Lewis has beaten that I wouldn't pick Tuivasa to beat.
Sure.
But his blades would do hideous things to Tai Tuivasa.
Oh my god, yes.
I mean, he's still, bigger, probably functionally stronger. Yeah, I mean, I just think, like, Tuivasa's just going to do the Greg Hardy thing. He's going to low kick him a bunch, and it's going to really hurt.
Yeah, I agree. He's going to kick the shit out of his legs, and if the Greg Hardy fight is any indication, again, there may not be great defense. He may have gotten hurt before it happened, but if a big guy comes in swinging recklessly, Tuivasa can actually time counterpunches, and he'll put 2 or 3 together.
Mm-hmm.
So that combined with me expecting him to actually use those low kicks with a pressuring approach that backs Derek Lewis up, I'm picking him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's it. Do we want to stop the segment here and then come back?
Do we want to stop it here, or do we want to do Cannonier Brunson? Because that's, I think, it's an interesting one, and I honestly don't know how I'm going with that one at the moment.
No, neither do I. Let's take a break so we can figure out where we're going with it. Since we already spent so much time in segment 1 on the main event, we'll be right back, folks, with Jared Cannonier versus Derek Brunson. Possibility that we sneak another main card fight in here, but if not, everything that you don't hear will make it onto the Patreon. So, after this. Oh, God. I just had a very disconcerting close-up of Machine Gun Kelly and Megan Fox in the audience.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are 1 or 2 of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. You can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
All right, welcome back to Heavy Hands. We are now moving on to the third fight from the top, third fight from the bottom. Jared Cannonier versus Derek Brunson, a middleweight clash. Years in the making, Phil. Yeah?
Kind of is.
Kind of. I'm kind of really interested in it, actually.
I still don't know what's going on in this fight.
No. No, I don't. I have no idea. Is there a particular reason for that for you? Because there's one of these guys I think I have a much harder time sussing out than the other.
I like for both of them. I mean, so the main thing is, like, Derek Brunson can survive on the feet with scary people.
Yeah.
You're like, but how much?
Uh-huh.
How much can he survive on the feet with scary people? And you're also like, Jared Cannonier can stop takedowns.
But how much?
And you find yourself thinking, is it because he's good at stopping takedowns now?
Yeah.
Or is it because he's huge for middleweight?
Yeah.
He's a former heavyweight.
He's a terrifyingly powerful middleweight. And then how much, the question then becomes, how much does that matter against Derek Brunson, who is a similarly terrifyingly powerful middleweight? And
right,
also
because,
a good wrestler.
Yeah, so how much does, like, if Cannonier gets taken down, does he simply look like he used to and just try and, does he just start getting taken down repeatedly and trying to play guard as he did against, like, Glover Teixeira and, I believe, Jan Blachowicz? Or does he actually shuck Derek Lewis off? In which case, it seems like things will go south pretty quickly for Derek.
Brunson, you said Lewis. I'm offended on Derek's behalf.
Sorry.
Have you seen, by the way, this is completely not relevant to your question, but Derek Brunson has now made a quiet meme out of standing like a goofy action figure in all his photos?
Yeah.
Somebody That's great. He was just doing like a weird lat spread stance and people made fun of him and he didn't reply to any of it, but now he just does all his photos in an even more exaggerated version of that stance. I love Derek Brunson, man.
Yeah, I like the way that he does that, like, knowingly sending himself up. Whereas, for example, Conor McGregor does it and he's like,
this looks so fucking
I look
cool.
like the baddest, sexiest man in the world.
Yes. Derek Brunson seems a much more humble, down-to-earth man. I really appreciate that about him. As to your question about Cannonier's wrestling defense, the initial question being, does he get taken down and play guard? I'm going to say no at first.
Ooh.
That's my answer. Because I do think, in addition to just being strong, I think like that was, for example, a major factor against both Branch and Hermanson, two guys who have most notably tried to take him down repeatedly. He's clearly, very strong and can just shut the takedowns off in a way that he couldn't in the bigger divisions. But he also did get taken down by those guys and did force a scramble. It may be a factor that in fact, I'm sure it's a factor that he's stronger and it's easier to force the scrambles. But at light heavyweight, he didn't even try most of the time. He just accepted the position. And I think he has worked that out. I don't think he is willing to accept a position. But it's at first. Like, how good of a wrestler do you have to be outside of just physical superiority to not be made to accept the position? And if Derek Brunson, who is a really strong mat wrestler, in addition to a solid takedown artist, but I'm often more impressed by Derek Brunson on the ground than I am by just his takedown ability. How long does it take a guy like Derek Brunson to just win the scramble, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to be defensive from my back?
Yeah.
So I
got to be like, yes, that's the second takedown, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, or just the first takedown if it succeeds and Cannonier forces a scramble, but it just doesn't win the scramble.
Yeah.
And
because it was surprising, like how Branch got him down on his first two takedown attempts.
Yeah, and he popped right back up.
Simply just that. Cannonier just stood back up again.
Yeah. So Derek Brunson has got to be, without doubt. I mean, this might even go back. This almost certainly goes back to his fights at light heavyweight. He's the best wrestler Cannonier has ever fought.
Glover Teixeira.
Okay, yeah, Glover.
Surely.
Yeah. Even then, I might say,
as a pure wrestler, like a technical wrestler, you might say, it's Derek Brunson.
Teixeira's, ground
Glover's
game
obviously
is
just bigger.
It's bigger, and his takedown game, I think, has a little fewer options available to him.
Mm-hmm.
And his ground game, I don't know where you want to draw this distinction. At a certain point, it becomes meaningless, but is much more of a jiu-jitsu style ground game than the sort of riding, pinning approach that Brunson employs. But yeah, he's up there, and certainly at middleweight, clearly the best wrestler he's fought. Not that David Branch is nothing. Not that Jack Hermanson can't hit takedowns, but Derek Brunson would take down Sean Strickland. I'm pretty confident of that. He might still lose. He'd probably get jabbed up an awful lot, but he would get a takedown. Hermanson didn't come close. So I think whenever that's the case, for modern Brunson, it's a huge advantage, right?
Yes.
It's like the Darren Till fight was one where he just had the out. He could get into as much trouble on the feet as he wanted or didn't want, and it just didn't matter because, like we were talking about with Bobby Knuckles against Adesanya, like you can make Derek Brunson so uncomfortable that he reverts to his instincts, but if his instincts work, it's not really that big a problem. You got to sleep him with one shot. Could happen. Certainly could happen. Cannonier's a devastating puncher. But if you're going to buzz Derek Brunson or just make him uncomfortable, and then he's going to be able to get in and out-wrestle you with sustained success, in my opinion, you're probably going to lose that fight. You got to be able to stop Derek Brunson's wrestling. And so to me, that is by far the biggest question of this fight.
Yeah, and it's a totally fair one. Like, again, that branch fight, Cannonier gives a lot of takedowns up before he starts stuffing them, and really only start stuffing them because I think Branch is just getting tired. It's starting to shoot like desperation, start to go for desperation shots.
And Jack Hermanson was visibly terrified after the first wrestling exchanges with Cannonier. He was like, "Oh my god, this guy is pretty strong, huh? Maybe I should stay away from him, or maybe I should try to take him down with fear just beaming out of both of my eyes." Yeah, I don't think it's not the same thing. Even a scared Derek Brunson is a very effective wrestler, as we saw against Till. Like you're gonna scare him into dominating you on the mat. So how do you stop that? Now, supposing Jared Cannonier can, which is worth talking about, or supposing that, maybe it's just a question of he's not nearly as vulnerable. Well, I would like to think he isn't nearly as vulnerable as Darren Till to just being run straight backward, which was the real problem for Darren, is that he couldn't get out of the way of the shots. So he became a victim of his own success because, again, the more he hurt Brunson, the more he invoked the takedown and then just had exactly the wrong reaction to get away from it. If Cannonier is just prepared to sidestep and keep Brunson at distance and not allow him to get a grip on the legs and kill the drive, kill that straight line, which he might be able to do. I think Jared Cannonier's footwork has come a long way, actually. Over the course of his middleweight career. I think actually the two of us were among the few who were kind of quietly impressed with his fight with Kelvin Gastelum, which was like not a good fight. And it wasn't one of those ones where you look at it and you're like, man, Cannonier really won this fight. It's kind of questionable to some people, but between the two fighters, Cannonier was the one actually like doing smart things and making adjustments and coming up with counters and avoiding what was coming back at him progressively over the course of the fight. He had the technical wherewithal and the presence of mind to make adjustments, whereas Kelvin Gastelum only makes one kind of adjustment, which is to do what you're doing more. And I think a big part of that was Cannonier actually showing some decent footwork. So maybe he can. Maybe it's not the same situation as the Till fight, and he will incite the takedowns, but just be able to shut them down before Brunson can actually get in on his legs, which would be huge for him.
Yeah. I don't know. I found myself wondering, like, if there's one thing that, like, the people that Brunson has fought have lacked is, I guess, just physicality, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were either physical. I mean, in his recent streak, they were either kind of physical with no element of danger, like Heinisch or Theodoru, or they were dangerous with no element of physicality, like Holland and Shabazian, and to some extent Till.
Yeah.
And like, it's the Jacare fight which really concerns me, which is going back a bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, he's a big, plodding, powerful person that Brunson wasn't sure that he could out-wrestle. And admittedly, no, this isn't necessarily, he's not going to treat Cannonier the same way that he treated Jacare.
No.
But he does also spend just like a bunch of time in striking distance with him, and also just like eats a bunch of kicks. Cannonier is a very willing and powerful kicker.
He certainly is.
And this was a very physically diminished, I think, even at this point, Jacare.
Mm-hmm.
Many people pointed out, like, way that Jacare kind of Terminator walks over to Brunson after he hurts him.
Yeah.
My primary thought of that was just like, not, oh wow, that's cool. It was just, oh, Jacare has no knees left.
Yeah, he's not going to run.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm still just concerned about that kind of fight, and I guess I always will be Derek Brunson until I see him. I see him win it. I would like to see him win it. I'm going to pick Jared Cannonier because I'm going to double sadness hedge this one.
Wow.
Picking against Bobby and picking against the new, even more likable, blonde Brunson. Picking both of them to lose.
Wow. You're almost in a way. This is sort of cowardly, Phil. Not in the way a normal sadness hedge is. You're sort of guaranteeing that one of them's going to win. You know, you're like, these are both fights where the guy really could win. This one, I think, even more so than the other one. There's like, oh, there's a clear avenue to victory here. Mm-hmm. And you're like, if I pick against him, I won't be wrong. And he really might do it. You're supposed to sadness hedge when you're like, I can see it, but I don't know.
It's all sadness hedges all day for me.
Man.
It's just the fact that, like, one of the things about Cannonier is that he also did all right against Whittaker. As you said, he hurt him super bad. And
I mean, he did all right. He had moments.
He did all right, but more than that, like, didn't his arm get broken early on in the fight?
I don't know. Maybe. I've forgotten that, if so.
Thought he, like, got his arm broken blocking a kick.
Could be. Let's look that up.
He is, like, regardless, disgustingly physically overwhelming at this weight.
He did post a picture on his Instagram wearing a cast after the fight. So
yeah.
Oh wait, it's not a cast. It's really he may have it's I don't know if that's a broken arm. He looks like he has a splint and a wrist wrap more than a full arm cast. I think even if you broke your wrist, they'd give you a bigger cast than that, right? They would cast your whole hand.
He said he had broken arm, but you know, who knows?
Well, apparently he had
Certainly looks pretty.
Yeah, apparently he had a second surgery to repair it after the fact. So something seriously was wrong with his arm. There's no doubt about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and he was still kind of hanging tough. I think it happened relatively early in the fight. He's just a physical force. And just if he's slinging kicks if he's allowed to just stand there slinging kicks at Brunson like Jacare did, I trust Brunson to like get out the way all the time. Don't know that I do. I want Brunson to win, but I am sadness hedging, as you said, like a giant coward.
Like a baby. I'll just say I do trust Brunson to grab the foot and run forward if he keeps getting kicked. To me, it really comes down to the wrestling. I do see that being Brunson's big advantage here. And, Brunson win there and with mixed success. As you said, Theodoro is a guy who's physical but not dangerous. And I think historically a much better defensive wrestler than Cannonier has been. And it's not like Brunson just easily took him down over and over, but he did just kind of mush him up against the cage a lot and take him down notably a couple of key times. I don't think Brunson is shy about having to wrestle with someone who's strong. I don't think he's shy about having to wrestle with anyone except Jacare. And at the very least, he's got no reason to come into this fight already questioning whether he should go for the takedown. He should. That's obvious. So I'm going to pick Brunson here. I refuse to sadness hedge. I don't even feel I was sadness hedging by picking Adesanya. I'm being very brave with my picks on this episode, Phil. I bravely defied my feelings and picked Adesanya because I think the style matchup is just better for him, and I am bravely picking Derek Brunson. Also because the style matchup I think is a little better for him, but also it is slightly more like the pick I could have given for Whittaker, where I'm like, hey, he's got to weather some tough moments and do the right things with it. But I think it really does come down to if Derek Brunson is going to be made to freak out or get hurt, and then he can start wrestling you. You have to be able to stop that to convert that damage into a win. And you either have to do that by being like Adesanya and being like really slick with your defensive clinch work and really slick with your footwork at range and just shut him out of getting in on your legs. Or you got to stop him like Romero, and just be like strong and good enough at wrestling to out-wrestle him. Otherwise, I mean, who has, other than Jacare, like, and all the people that he just decided to run at and either knock them out or get knocked out by, who has Derek Brunson struggled to out-wrestle?
Oh yeah, like we've discussed this before. He's basically. It's basically Bobby Knuckles.
Yeah. He kind of out-wrestled Romero for significant stretches of that fight.
Much.
So yeah, I'm picking him for that. I like the wrestling.
It's fair enough.
Yeah. Should be good. This is a pretty good looking pay-per-view. It's not the kind of stuff we were just like drowning in the back half of 2021. Or the middle of the year in 2021, where just every pay-per-view was just littered with amazing fights, but there's really nothing to complain about here. Main card full of interesting fights, fantastic title fight rematch in the main event. I'm very much looking forward to this one, and I just can't wait to find out which fights we're going to lose over the course of this week.
Yeah, I mean, typically it's the day after we record that people.
Yeah, that seems to have been the pattern. Literally the last 2 episodes, we've lost a fight the day or day after we recorded the episode. Let me just do a quick refresh of the Wikipedia page here, in fact, and find out has anything been changed? No, as of now, everything is the same. Fingers crossed. All right, folks, thank you very much for tuning in. We hope you are as excited for these fights as we are. We will be back next week, of course, to discuss this some more. This is one of those ones that I'm just as much eager to talk about in hindsight as I am to preview it, if not more so, because I want to know what happens. We also have another card around the corner. Let's take a look at it for the first time. RDA versus Fiziev. Johnny Walker versus Jamal Hill. Okay. Julian Marquez, Kyle Daukaus. Joaquin Buckley, Abdul Razak Al Hassan.
You can't see me, but right now I'm pressing my fingers and pointing at the sky in memory of Patrick Wyman.
That's a shoo-in right there for the Patrick Wyman Memorial Award for Explosive Muscularity. Yeah, it's looking all right, actually. It's not terrible. It's better than the last 2 Fight Night cards by far, in my opinion. So that'll be a fun one to talk about.
It is currently better than the last 2 Fight Night cards.
Currently, yes. It's still a long, long way off. But we will talk about whatever remains, both on this card and that one, next week. Until then, find us on Twitter. Phil's at Evil Greg Jackson. I'm at Boxing Bush, BUSCH. Once again, I will tell you to check out the Patreon. There will be some more content. Oh, God. I hate that I used that word. There will be some more content related to this UFC 271 card in a bonus episode up on there. And otherwise, until next week, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.